Today at ET Infra, we are joined by Mr. Morgan Zimmermann, CEO, NETVIBES Dassault Systèmes, a well-renowned virtual and digital solutions company. Mr. Morgan, thank you very much for joining us out here at ET Infra. Today, I would like to sort of begin. If you could briefly outline, NETVIBES Dassault Systèmes engagement, particularly in India, and how are you going forward with it?
Sure. So thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss with you. So at Dassault Systèmes, we help our customers drive the transformation of their business in about every industry. To do that, we're using virtual twin experience. And on the virtual twin experience, we are projecting all of the data, and we can probably go into more specific later today, but all of the data that we can capture from any of our systems legacy, from our customers' legacy systems, so that they can interpret it, understand it, investigate on the data, and take the right decisions. With that, we are globally in aerospace, in infrastructure, in transportation and mobility, in life science, in about every industry.
Right. You did talk about the virtual twin experience. Could you briefly outline how you're positioning that particular solutions of yours to the Indian market?
Sure. But maybe to explain that, maybe I should be more specific on what I mean by virtual twin experience. If I try to simplify it, virtual twin experience is three things positioned in one place. It is the most advanced representation of the product, the factory, or the company. In many cases, this is actually a 3D representation. All of the data that you can then map and project into that representation, and then the people and the process. Let me explain why this is important to us. And I can take an example for that. If I give you two Excel spreadsheets, one with the location of restaurants and another one with locations of flower shop, and I ask you to find a restaurant near a flower shop, it's a difficult exercise. But if they're on a map, it becomes easy. Now, if you think about it, if I give you, for aircraft as an example, if I give you corrosion data, simulation data, incidents data, flight data in separate systems, they're difficult to interpret. But as soon as they are projected on the virtual twin experience of the aircraft, then you can dynamically contextualize them, understand them, interpret them. That's step number one. But virtual twin is not just a representation. It's a model, which means you can play with it. You can do what-if scenario. What happens if I change this design by this design? If I change this material by this material? So you can play what-if scenario and find the most relevant solution. And finally, if whenever you have a problem or you have a solution, the next thing you do is you send an email, you're dead. Because there is no way you can track execution and have efficiency in the way you execute. So you need to have the people and the collaboration process in the same place. And this is what we call virtual twin experience. And we are applying virtual twin experience as a transformation lever in many industries, which goes from infrastructures to manufacturing industries and, of course, to life science. And we do that in India in these three sectors.
Right. So cutting across all these sectors, be it mobility, be it roads and highways, which are the specific sectors in India that you are looking ahead?
So I can give you a few examples. In the transportation or infrastructure, we are working with linear transportation, train as an example. We are of course working with aerospace and defense. We have extremely good business with the transportation and mobility, let's say automotive, large automotive manufacturers. That's examples. And of course, if we stay in the infrastructure, you can also look at what we do with cities. We have many cities like Jaipur city as an example, and I can tell you more about what we do in the city business, or in offshore plants business with L&T hydrocarbon as an example.
Right. So you did talk about the Jaipur project. Could you give us a brief outline how you're going about it? How is this project coming up for NETVIBES?
Sure, but it's all city projects are the same. I told you about how we use virtual twin experience to drive transformation. Now, if you apply that to government bodies or to cities, it is the same topic. Understanding the complexity, you can look at the city as a very complex system. Right. Understanding a city as a system is a difficult exercise. So to do that, you need to be able to collect all of the possible data that you get from the city. That could be pollution data, traffic data, investment data, assets or infrastructure data. And you need to project that into a 3D model of the city. Why a 3D model of the city? Because once again, cities have to do their planning exercise on the long run. So of course you have to run the operation of the city with a real-time scale perspective. You have incidents or traffic or that you need to manage. But you also want, with the same thing, to manage a very long term. What happens if we redesign this part of the city this way or this way? So you need to be able to model that. But then the execution of the transformation of the city, it's even more complex than a company, because you have to coordinate various governmental bodies, various administrations. Right. And you need a collaborative platform that actually allows to connect all of these administrations together. You need to make sure that they have a common understanding of the plan. And in that case, I would say 3D is a very good lever to share a common understanding of what we are doing. But then you need to share the same workflows and collaborations and plans together with all of these bodies, so you can actually track the execution. So what we do with cities is exactly that. We are building up a model of the city, getting all of the data into it so we can understand what happened, doing what if scenario to orchestrate the future, connect all of the people from all of the administrations so they can work together, and they can do that at all of the time scale, from real-time operation up to planning, the transformation for the next 30 years or 50 years.
This city-oriented, solutions and offering from yours, give us a bit of, if you could outline. And in the Indian context, what are the challenges and opportunities that at least you have come across in terms of providing your solutions in such? Jaipur is something that you have worked on. If any other cities in India that you are working on, and what is unique, if there is anything particularly unique when it comes to such projects with Indian cities?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. So there are multiple cities that we are working on in India. I can already share some of the dynamic of what we see in India. First of all, we are seeing a very rapid adoption in India of virtual twin experience. And we are seeing a rapid adoption because there is a rapid transition or transformations of these cities. The demographic dynamics, the economical dynamics is leading to very rapid transformation, and to sustain this transformation and making sure that this transformation is geared toward the right sustainability efforts, maximizing the proper sustainability impact, while coping with the complexity of the economic and demographic dynamics, is something that we see very active here in India.
Right. My next question would be regard to the supply chain. That is something that NETVIBES is also engaged with. In the last 2 years, we have seen a lot of geopolitical developments. Not to say the pandemic has also sort of created disruption in the entire supply chain network that we knew earlier. So now we are talking about nearshoring, friendshoring, and all those terms when it comes to supply chain network has come in. How is NETVIBES sort of navigating through all this?
Sure. So we are seeing, well, I just said, not only our customers have been facing disruption, but today we can even say that they've been facing cumulative disruptions. And it is very true that their P&L is currently really challenged by the supply chain disruption, either because they can't source anymore what they need, or because the cost impact of what they have to source is changing the competitivity of their product. So in that perspective, we are acting in multiple streams. Stream number one is measuring the risk and the cost impact of supply chain. Let's take a simple example. When material cost is changing, or in these days, material cost is multiplied by a significant factor. For a company to be able to understand the impact of this material cost on the product they manufacture is very difficult. And we have developed specific AI-driven and analytic technology to factor in the risk of material cost increase, and then to measure how much that risk will impact the cost of each product and how much that risk will impact the entire supply chain of a given company. Because whenever you can measure the risk, then you can take mitigation scenarios and alternative scenarios to minimize the impact. But first is measure the impact. And I can tell you it's a very, very difficult exercise, and we've built amazing technology for that. Then the next problem is, how do you cope with lack of specific pieces of equipment, as an example, or components that are not available anymore? Here again, we have developed specific AI-driven technology. I can give you examples. We have developed a similarity engine that is analyzing the shape of the parts to be procured. And you will see this is very interesting, because whenever you analyze the shape of the part that you can procure, Then you can look at the part you need to procure, and you can do automatic comparison with everything you have already procured or with everything that actually sits on the market, so that in few seconds you can actually find alternative parts that could fit the purpose for which you were searching in the past. And with that, we have been changing the supply chain game for many of our customers. Eaton, as an example, recently at one of our forums in North America, they explained how they were lacking a specific small component, which led to stopping the plant.
Right.
And it was a small €2 component, so very cheap, in fact. They did get proposal for this component at multiple $100s from various suppliers.
Right.
But they used the similarity engine, and with the similarity engine, they managed to identify that they had this exact same component in one of their inventory in another division of the company, actually in India, and they could source it from their own company within hours. Without these similarity capabilities, they could have spent weeks to identify that. So we're using AI and 3D similarity to find similar parts, and we've gone beyond that. We even actually have aggregated on the cloud one of the largest part database in the world. We have 60 million parts for which we actually have the 3D model available, so that whenever someone is doing a design or is lacking a part in his supply chain, within one single click, with a search by similarity, he can identify similar parts, maybe with different names, that would be available anywhere else in the world.
Right. And we are talking about something that spans across the global supply chain.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then, of course, but this goes into another of Dassault Systèmes division. We have many additional technology to solve supply chain, which goes from optimizing the logistics and so on, and the inventories, with Quintic as an example.
Yeah. Could you give us any views in terms of how do you see the whole supply chain and logistics sort of framework out here in India? There is a lot of push by the government to increase the efficiency of our logistics across the states and the pan-India itself. Your experience, how has that been?
So I have not seen, and I have not been able to measure myself, the impact of that here in India. But I can tell you that what we are seeing worldwide is we are seeing most of the companies reinventing their entire supply chain, both in terms of what they buy, how they source from a strategic sourcing standpoint, down to how they optimize the entire logistics, building in risk management to make sure they have the right alternatives and the right efficiencies to cope with challenges. And this is there are programs running in most of the geographies, indeed to avoid short falling again into the traps of the last 2 years in terms of supply chain disruptions.
Right. You did talk about your engagement in the aerospace sector. Coming into India specific again, this is a burgeoning sector that we have. It's coming up. It since growth. We have many frontier companies such as the Tata Group and the Mahindra Group who are engaged in the aerospace sector in India and collaborating with their foreign partners. How's NETVIBES Dassault Systèmes engagement into that specific sector in India?
So I can do a few comments on that. Of course, we are doing many things in the aerospace and defense sector. We have announced lately, this is public, as an example, that we are doing the predictive maintenance for the Rafale aircraft with Dassault Aviation. And that's kind of an interesting topic, because to do that, we are actually capturing data coming from tens of different data sources, putting it on a dedicated cloud for military purpose, and then leveraging the whole of that data on virtual twin experience to manage, the improvement of the fleet availability, the predictive maintenance, and all of what goes along with it. We are applying the same thing and the same types of approach, with many defense players, including here in India, of course.
So, like we were talking about the entire NETVIBES engagement in the aerospace sector in India, any particular solutions that you have, the company has, do you think would be an ideal fit for the Indian ecosystem?
I would say that what is very interesting for the defense sector is how we can use a virtual twin experience of whatever is being operated by the defense, whether it is boats or aircraft or military equipments. How can we manage a virtual twin of these equipments to optimize the actual availability and the performance of these equipments on the field.
Right.
And that's a very interesting topic because, you know, military equipments are expensive devices, but in many cases, their availability is pretty low. It's complex systems, and because of the complexity of these systems and because of the maintenance effort of these systems, sometimes the availability of these systems is far below 50% of their time. So if we are capable of enhancing the availability of this defense system,
right,
we have major impact for the defense industry. We strongly believe that virtual twin experience is the way to go to improve availability of these systems, and we are doing that in many defense sectors in the world. Because whenever we can connect the most advanced representation of these super sophisticated systems, connected with real-time data, sensor data, equipment data, technicians' feedback, pilot feedbacks, and so on, then we can actually work on understanding the failures, on understanding the problems, on understanding the predicted problems, and optimizing the entire maintenance process. But if then we accumulate that with all of what we do with our quinting bond as an example in terms of optimizations, of resource optimizations and maintenance plans optimization, if you accumulate our ability to understand and predict and our ability to plan and optimize, then of course we can have serious impact for military equipment availabilities to conduct their missions on the field.
Okay. Earlier in the conversation, you talked about your engagement in the mobility in the infrastructure sector. Could you give us the specific examples, and if you could disclose any names of your partners where you are now completely engaged in sort of developing these solutions for the Indian infrastructure sector?
I can give you, so beyond the city type of example that you mentioned earlier, we have, I mentioned also about train examples, but I don't think I can mention the name. However, there is one customer I'd like to mention. It's in the infrastructure, but it's more like in the oil and gas infrastructure, right, which I think is interesting. It's LNG hydrocarbon. Right. I find it interesting because, you know, what they do is, they're manufacturing extremely complex, multi-hundred thousand pieces infrastructure plants. Right. Which they have to deliver on time, on schedule. And to do that, they have to coordinate very large teams. And the coordination of these very large teams, which includes, the construction process, engineering process, the procurement process, is quite difficult. And they're doing that very successfully using virtual twin experiences. Right. So I think that's an interesting example. But that can go even further. We have companies that are in the real estate, Godrej, where they're going beyond what I just mentioned, because they're actually even using AI-driven design optimization. Right. So that, the entire design of the facilities are optimized thanks to artificial intelligence to find, how to best orchestrate, the design to match the expectations of each of the customers.
Right. In India, we have embarked on this huge infrastructure infrastructure development push. It's estimated to be at around $1 trillion. How is NETVIBES Dassault Systèmes sort of looking into it? How do you plan to sort of capitalize this sort of push the government and the industry as a whole is sort of going forward for?
I can make a long story short. We have declared at Dassault Systèmes that we will be addressing three sectors. We will be addressing the manufacturing sector, we will be addressing the infrastructure sector, and we will be addressing the life science sector. Right. So infrastructure is very key and core to what we do at Dassault Systèmes, and we have declared we will address it. We will address it with virtual twin experience, of course. And we believe that this is key for a number of reasons, and one of them is sustainability. Because we believe that when you are addressing infrastructure, if you don't factor in from the beginning the ability to make sure that the infrastructure can be built and operated in a sustainable manner, you will suffer for many years. So not only we have declared that we will be addressing sustainability, not sustainability, infrastructure. We have declared we will do that with virtual twin experience, and we also have declared that we will do that for the purpose of making sure that everything that is done on the infrastructure side is made in a sustainable way.
So, and my last query would be around, you are a French company. There is a really good bilateral relation between India and France. So, give us a sense, when you are coming from France and other French companies who are looking into India or already have operations in the area, how's the investment climate that you have seen over the years and what it has led up to currently? That is my first part of the question. And second would be, what sort of more expansion or investment are we going to see from NETVIBES Dassault Systems out here in India?
So without going into sharing, our detailed plans, what I can tell you is that we are seeing a dynamic, an impressive dynamic in India. The speed of adoption of virtual twin experience is amazing. The speed at which Indian companies are driving their own transformations and inventing new ways of working and inventing new types of product to serve the three sectors that I mentioned are really impressive. And we are actually seeing the innovation pace in India sometimes much higher than what we see in many other countries. So I have to admit myself that I'm extremely impressed each time I come to India by what I see in the dynamic of the companies and our partners and customers here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. It was really a pleasure having you out here at ET Infra. So viewers, for today that is all. Stay tuned for our next interaction.